What if I told you that the strongest people you know, the ones who seem to have it all together, are often the ones fighting the loudest battles in silence? There's a moment few people talk about. It doesn't come with fanfare or a dramatic soundtrack. It happens when you're alone, staring at your ceiling at 2 a.m., and something inside you cracks. Maybe it was the breakup you didn't see coming. Maybe it was the job rejection after years of trying. Or maybe it was just nothing. An emptiness that wrapped around your chest and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." That moment, that's where emotional strength is born or lost. Let me tell you a story. Olivia had the life everyone wanted. At just 28, she was working at a top creative agency in San Diego, living in an ocean view apartment, attending the right parties, posting the perfect life on Instagram. She smiled in every photo. She crushed deadlines. She was that girl people envied. But one morning, Olivia stood at the edge of the Pacific. Not for a photo, but because she wasn't sure if she could keep pretending. She felt hollow, disconnected. She couldn't understand why everything looked right on the outside, yet felt so wrong inside. It wasn't depression, at least not the kind anyone could name. It was emotional exhaustion, a slow erosion of her inner world, the kind that doesn't scream, but softly whispers, "You're slipping." And here's the truth, no one wants to say out loud. Most people aren't taught how to handle their emotions. We're told to grind, to hustle, to smile through the pain. We're praised for being strong, but punished the moment we fall apart. Somewhere along the way, we confused numbness with resilience. But Stoicism teaches something different. It doesn't ask you to suppress emotion. It teaches you how to respond to it with wisdom, with clarity, and with control. The Stoics believed that real strength comes not from ignoring life's chaos, but from grounding yourself amidst it. Not from never feeling pain, but from not being destroyed by it. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 habits, each drawn from timeless Stoic wisdom, that can completely transform the way you deal with adversity, stress, rejection, and the overwhelming noise of modern life. But this isn't just a checklist. It's a blueprint for building your emotional armor without hardening your heart. And here's the thing, these habits aren't just for philosophers. They're for people like Olivia, like me, like you, because emotional strength isn't some luxury. It's your lifeline. If you've ever found yourself spiraling over things you can't control, if you've ever snapped at someone and regretted it the second after, if you've ever felt like you're walking through life wearing a mask, just to survive, this video is for you. So take a deep breath. What you're about to hear might challenge you. It might stir something you've buried. It might feel uncomfortable. That's how you know it matters. And if you believe this kind of conversation needs to exist raw, real, and rooted in wisdoms, subscribe to this channel. It's what helps us keep going, creating content that doesn't just entertain, but elevates. Your support means everything. Before we dive in, here's a quick question to reflect on, and I want you to drop your answer in the comments. Which do you think is the biggest emotional trap most people fall into? A. Trying to control things that are outside their power. B. Ignoring their emotions and pretending everything's fine. Comment A or B below and let's see what most of you believe. Your answer might just reveal your first emotional blind spot. Now, let's get into habit number 1. Marcus didn't sleep the night his startup collapsed. He sat in the quiet of his Chicago apartment, the cold blue light from his laptop still flickering on his face. A spreadsheet stared back at him full of red numbers, broken promises, and months of effort now unraveling. The investors were gone. The app was dead. And so, he thought, was the version of himself he had believed in. But something unexpected happened. Instead of spiraling into a rage or drowning in shame, Marcus opened his journal, something he hadn't touched in months, and wrote one sentence. I can't control the market, but I can control what I do next. That line became his anchor. This is where emotional strength truly begins, not in avoiding storms, but in choosing how to stand when they hit. And perspective, when practiced daily, becomes your greatest tool. There's a line from ancient Stoic thought that's as sharp today as it was thousands of years ago. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. This isn't just a nice quote, it's a weapon against anxiety, because most of the emotional chaos we feel doesn't come from the world. It comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. That's what Marcus had to face. He couldn't reverse the market. He couldn't rewrite time, but he could decide what he'd build next, how he'd show up, and what kind of man he wanted to be. That realization didn't fix everything, but it gave him clarity. So ask yourself right now, what are you trying to manage that's never been yours to hold? Someone else's opinion, the past, the future. Let it go. You are not obligated to solve everything. You are only called to respond with wisdom to what is within your reach. That is the power of perspective. But perspective isn't just philosophical, it's physiological. When you pause before reacting, you change your brain. You give your nervous system space. You interrupt the loop of overthinking and fear. That's what Daniel, a 24-year-old med student in Boston, discovered the hard way. He was standing in the ER hallway, phone in hand, shaking. He'd just received a text from his partner during a high-stress shift. It was sharp, accusatory, and laced with misunderstanding. His body surged with anger. He almost fired back, but then he stopped, took a breath, then another. A phrase from his therapist flashed in his mind. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is your power. He slipped his phone back in his pocket. He didn't respond, not yet. Instead, he went outside, leaned against the brick wall of the hospital, and watched the snow fall. Quiet, still, breathing. That pause saved more than a conversation. It saved his relationship. You see, the inner pause isn't weakness. It's mastery. It's the difference between burning bridges and building them. It's the line between reacting out of hurt and responding with heart. Most of us were never taught this. We were told to fight back, to defend, to assert ourselves. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that clarity comes not from reacting, but from returning to yourself before speaking to the world. And yes, it takes practice. Try this. The next time you feel that wave of emotion rise, when you're about to snap, shut down, or implode, just for 5 seconds. Place your hand on your chest. Breathe in deeply. Ask yourself, what is this really about? Not what just happened, but what's underneath. You might discover fear. You might uncover old wounds. You might even realize it's not about this moment at all. That's the clarity the inner pause gives you. It reveals the truth beneath the noise. Daniel later told me that what he learned that night wasn't how to be nicer. It was how to be free from his own emotional autopilot. Perspective teaches you this. You are not your first reaction. You are not your fear. You are the awareness behind it. And the more you practice stepping into that awareness, the stronger you become, not by suppressing emotion, but by steering it. So the next time life throws something at you, and it will, don't just react. Breathe. Ground yourself. Ask, is this within my control? And if it's not, let it pass like a cloud across your mind. You are the sky. The storm is temporary. Emotional strength doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you don't have to be ruled by everything. And that shift in perspective, that's how you begin to lead your life, not follow its chaos. Lisa had spent years designing beautiful things for people who never truly saw her. From high-profile product launches to rebranding billion-dollar companies, her work lived in magazines, on websites, on screens. It was polished, precise, applauded. But the woman behind the portfolio felt like a ghost in her own life. She lived in New York City, where everything moves fast, where you're taught that burnout is just part of being brilliant. But one morning, something cracked. Lisa stood in her tiny Brooklyn kitchen, coffee untouched, staring at her reflection in the microwave door, and whispered out loud, "I don't know who I am anymore." That was the beginning. The truth wasn't that she was lost. The truth was that she'd abandoned herself a long time ago. And she finally had the courage to say it. Emotional strength isn't just about bouncing back from what life throws at you. It's also about looking honestly at what you've been avoiding, the stories you've buried, the parts of yourself you're afraid to examine, and then choosing deliberately, daily to face them, not with judgment, but with compassion. The Stoics spoke often of self-examination, not for the sake of self-punishment, but to bring the unconscious into the light. To know yourself not as the world has labeled you, not as your past has defined you, but as you truly are. That kind of honesty is not easy. It's raw, it's sobering, but it is where resilience is born. Lisa didn't change her life overnight. She began with a letter, not to her boss, or her friends, or her future self. A letter to the version of her that had been left behind, the creative, curious, unafraid part of her that once found joy in making things just for the sake of it. The letter began with, "I'm sorry for forgetting you," and ended with, "I'm ready to come back." That act of self-honesty opened a door, not just to clarity, but to freedom. The problem is, most people run from reflection. It's easier to stay busy than to be still, easier to numb than to notice. But the longer you avoid your inner world, the more power it holds over you. Unexamined, emotions don't disappear, they just shape your decisions from the shadows. So what if, instead of avoiding yourself, you sat with yourself? What if, for 5 minutes a day, you turned inward not to critique, but to understand? There's a simple but powerful ritual that helps: emotional mapping. At the end of each day, Lisa began assigning colors to her emotions. Blue for calm, yellow for joy, red for frustration, gray for emptiness. No paragraphs, no pressure, just color. Over weeks, she began to see her life in patterns. Days where gray turned to red, weeks that shimmered with yellow. It gave her insight she'd never had, not because she learned something new, but because she finally looked. Reflection is not a luxury, it's a necessity, especially in a world that teaches us to move faster than our feelings. When you reflect, you become your own compass. You stop chasing other people's definitions of success and start listening to your own voice. And here's the surprising part. This practice doesn't just reveal your pain, it reveals your power, the resilience you forgot you had, the moments you handled with grace, the strength you showed even when no one else noticed. Lisa now ends each day with a question. What did I learn about myself today? Some nights the answer is soft, other times it stings, but every answer brings her closer to who she really is. The Stoics knew that resilience wasn't about appearing strong. It was about building a life rooted in truth. A life where you can weather storms, not because you pretend they don't hurt, but because you know exactly who you are when they pass. So if you're looking to grow stronger emotionally, don't just learn to fight back against the world. Learn to sit with yourself, to tell the truth, to reflect honestly. That's the work most people avoid, and that's why it's the very path that sets you free. When Noah walked away from Silicon Valley, most people thought he'd lost his mind. He had what others would call a dream life: 6-figure income, sleek apartment, access to the brightest minds in tech. But he also had something else, something no one could see, a weight on his chest every morning, a growing sense that the life he was living wasn't really his. So he left, not with a plan, but with a yearning. He packed his car and drove cross-country to Asheville, North Carolina, where he had no connections and only one idea: to build something with his hands again. That's how his community garden was born, not out of ambition, but desperation. Not to escape the world, but to reconnect with something real. At first, the silence was deafening. No pings from Slack, no meetings, no applause, just soil, air, and his own thoughts. But in that space, something incredible started to happen. He began to notice things he hadn't in years: the texture of sunlight through the leaves, the hum of bees, the joy on a neighbor's face when they picked their first ripe tomato, and with each quiet moment, a phrase from a podcast he once dismissed kept echoing back. Gratitude is not a feeling, it's a discipline. Noah started recording voice notes each morning. Just 30 seconds of what he was thankful for, nothing big, nothing flashy. Some days it was a cup of warm tea. Other days, the laughter of a child from down the street. Slowly, his mind began to shift. From scarcity, what he'd given up, what he didn't have, what was missing, to abundance, what was already here. That's the truth about gratitude. It's not something that comes when life is perfect. It's a lens that makes the imperfect beautiful. But healing doesn't stop with gratitude. Sometimes, to move forward, you have to lay something down. Noah didn't just walk away from a job. He had to release an identity. He'd been the guy who made it, the golden child of his family, the pride of his alma mater. Letting go of that story was like peeling off a second skin. Painful, raw, necessary. So one night, under a full moon, he stood alone in his backyard and burned a box filled with symbols of his old life business cards. A photo from his first big product launch, a letter he'd written to himself at 22. The flames flickered like a heartbeat, and when the fire died down, he felt it, the first breath of freedom. Letting go is one of the most misunderstood acts of strength. People think it means giving up or forgetting, but real letting go is active. It's acknowledging what no longer serves you, honoring it, and releasing it so you can grow. We hold on because we're afraid of emptiness, of regret, of the unknown. But what if the space that letting go creates isn't a void, but an invitation, a clearing for something richer, quieter, truer? Stoic philosophy teaches that loss is not tragedy, is transformation. Everything you love, everything you own, every role you play is temporary. You can either grip it until it breaks you, or you can open your hands and let it become what it was meant to, a chapter, not a cage. Noah now tends to his garden with more joy than he ever had in boardrooms. Each seed is a reminder. Sometimes you have to bury something to make it bloom. So if you feel like your life is stuck, like something inside you is withering, ask yourself, what have I been clinging to that's already gone? What part of me needs to be released so I can return to who I really am? Start with gratitude, not the performative kind, but the soul-deep recognition that even amidst uncertainty, beauty persists. Then practice letting go, not to erase the past, but to reclaim your future. Healing doesn't happen when we resist change. It happens when we allow it. And when you do, when you live in gratitude and release what no longer fits you, begin to experience life not as a constant chase, but as a quiet unfolding. Not as something you must conquer, but as something you can trust. That is abundance. That is emotional strength. And that is the freedom you've been looking for. Ava had always been a high achiever. Her career as a copywriter in Austin had skyrocketed over the past 3 years. Clients lined up. Her inbox overflowed, and her phone rarely left her hand. On the outside, it looked like she was living her dream, but inside, she felt like she was being pulled apart, one notification at a time. She started waking up already anxious. Her mornings weren't mornings, they were triage emails, deadlines, unread Slack threads. She'd sit down at her desk and lose herself in tasks that blurred into each other. By evening, she couldn't remember what she'd actually done, only that she was tired, depleted, and strangely empty. It wasn't burnout in the classic sense. It was something harder to name, a life packed with motion, but starved of meaning. One afternoon, she read a quote by Marcus Aurelius: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That single line hit her like a mirror. She realized that what was destroying her wasn't the work itself, it was her scattered attention, her fractured intention, and the illusion that every demand on her time was equally urgent. So she began a practice. Every morning, before checking her phone, she'd write down 3 things. Not a to-do list, but a to-focus list. 3 priorities that actually mattered to her personally, emotionally, spiritually. Some days it was complete the project, with clarity, but other days, it was call mom, or walk without headphones. That simple ritual changed everything. When you live with intention, you take back the steering wheel. You stop letting life pull you in a dozen directions, and start moving in one your own. But that requires clarity. And clarity begins with priorities. Most people don't lack time, they lack priority. They fill their days with noise because silence would demand truth. But intention means asking harder questions. What do I value more, being busy or being aligned? What will I remember in 10 years, the emails I answered or the moments I was truly present? Ava also began practicing what she called digital Sabbath, a sacred window each evening where she turned off all devices. No more endless scrolls, no more passive consumption. Instead, she read, sometimes she just sat. At first, the quiet unnerved her. Then, it started healing her. Mental freedom is not about escaping the world. It's about creating inner space even as the world spins. The Stoics knew this well. They lived in chaotic times, wars, political upheaval, exile. But their wisdom came from protecting the only thing they could fully own, their minds. To practice mental detachment is not to become indifferent, it's to become discerning. You start asking, does this deserve my attention? Does this energy belong to me? Is this mine to carry? You begin to notice the difference between urgent and important, between noise and signal. You stop reacting to everything and start choosing what you'll actually respond to. That's freedom. Ava realized she didn't need to chase every opportunity, please every client, or respond to every message immediately. She started setting boundaries, not to close herself off, but to protect what mattered most: her focus, her creativity, her peace. There's a kind of quiet strength that comes from intention. It's not flashy. It doesn't announce itself, but it radiates. People feel it in your presence, in your stillness, in your ability to be fully here, not half scattered somewhere else. You don't have to abandon your ambition to live this way. You just have to make sure your ambition is aligned with your essence, not your ego. When you know your priorities, the world can still be loud, but you're no longer lost in it. Ava still works hard. She still writes, still creates, still leads. But she does it from a place of presence now, not pressure. She doesn't just move fast, she moves deliberately, and that has made all the difference. Living with intention isn't about perfect balance. It's about conscious direction. It's the quiet act of choosing your life every single day. And that choice, repeated over time, becomes the foundation of emotional strength. Jordan's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. He sat up slowly, rubbed the sleep from his eyes, and stepped quietly into the hallway so he wouldn't wake his daughter. His home in Denver was modest, just enough space for the two of them, but in the early morning silence, it felt like a cathedral. For a long time, mornings were something Jordan survived. As a single dad, rebuilding his life after divorce, his days were often consumed with responsibilities: breakfast, school drop-offs, client calls, laundry, bedtime stories. Life moved in a loop of tasks, and while he managed to keep everything afloat, he often felt like he was disappearing into the blur. Then one morning, something changed. He sat at the kitchen table with his coffee, and instead of diving into his inbox, he asked himself a simple question: what do I want this day to mean? That became the beginning of his daily purpose ritual. Nothing dramatic, just one sentence each morning that would anchor his focus and spirit. Some days it was, "Today I will be patient." Other days, "Today I will make my daughter laugh." Or, "Today I will move toward healing." even if it's just one step. That single question, what do I want this day to mean, transformed Jordan's relationship with time, with himself, and with fatherhood. Purpose, when lived daily, is not a grand mission. It's a compass. It gives shape to your hours and soul to your effort. And in a world that constantly pushes us to do more, purpose gently reminds us to become more. The Stoics believed in this deeply. Marcus Aurelius would begin his days by reminding himself not only of the nature of life, but of his role within it. He didn't speak about destiny as something external. He spoke of it as a decision and internal contract you sign with your own values. Jordan began to see that too. He realized purpose isn't something you stumble upon one day, it's something you choose, moment by moment, breath by breath. But choosing it requires presence, and presence requires emotional awareness. Too often we look for meaning in milestones, promotions, relationships, recognition. But the soul doesn't operate on metrics. It responds to attention, to care, to truth. Purpose isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers through the ordinary, through a quiet walk, a kind word, a task, done with love. Jordan started creating small emotional rituals around his daily purpose. He brewed his morning coffee slowly, with both hands. He began journaling in one-line reflections at night. He hugged his daughter a few seconds longer each morning. These were not chores. They were sacred acts, rituals that brought intention into the fabric of his life. The more he practiced, the more grounded he felt. Not because life became easier, it didn't, but because he stopped drifting. He was no longer just reacting to the world. He was responding to it from a place of rooted meaning. That is emotional strength. At its highest level, the ability to move through life with direction. Even when everything around you feels uncertain, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need one intention to carry you through the day. That's how purpose works. It doesn't demand perfection. It asks only for presence. And if you've lost your sense of meaning, don't wait for some big revelation. Start with one small sentence. What will make this day meaningful? Let that question become your guide. In a culture obsessed with speed, stillness is an act of rebellion. In a world addicted to noise, silence is clarity. In a life filled with distractions, purpose is power. So write your intention, speak it, walk with it. Let it be the thread that weaves your hours into something sacred. Jordan still wakes early, not because he has to, but because he wants to meet his day before the world does. He knows that meaning isn't something out there waiting to be found. It's something he creates every morning. One breath, one choice, one purpose at a time. By now you've met them: Olivia, Marcus, Daniel, Lisa, Noah, Ava, and Jordan. 7 lives, 7 unique struggles, all united by a single thread: the journey toward emotional strength. But this wasn't just about bouncing back from stress or keeping calm in chaos. This was about something deeper, becoming whole again. Olivia taught us that success on the outside means nothing if you're breaking on the inside. Her breaking point wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a signal, a call to slow down and look within. In facing her emotional exhaustion, she opened the door to healing, not by working harder, but by working inward. Marcus reminded us that control is not about domination, it's about discernment. He discovered that his peace didn't come from forcing the world to go his way, but from releasing what he couldn't control and owning what he could. Through the simple act of redefining where to place his energy, he turned failure into clarity. Daniel showed us the power of pause, his ability to step away, breathe, and respond with intention instead of impulse. Salvaged more than a relationship, saved him from becoming someone he didn't want to be. The pause, however small, gave him the power to lead his emotions rather than be led by them. Lisa cracked open the mirror of self-honesty. She faced the uncomfortable truth that her life no longer aligned with her heart. Through reflection, through the courageous act of telling herself the truth, she began to rebuild, not from the image others had of her, but from the identity she had buried years ago. Noah's story taught us the art of release. Letting go of who he was in Silicon Valley didn't mean failure, it meant freedom. His gratitude practice didn't just lift his mood, it reconnected him to the sacred in the everyday. Through planting seeds in the soil, he was really replanting parts of himself he thought were gone. Ava gave us a masterclass in reclaiming time. She stopped measuring her worth by how busy she was and started defining her days by what truly mattered, by choosing intention over impulse and focus over frenzy. She built mental freedom in the most distracting era in human history. And Jordan, waking up before dawn in quiet Denver, redefined what purpose means. Not some grand mission, but a sentence written in the soft light of morning. His life didn't get easier, but it became deeply meaningful because he made space for intention in the ordinary. 7 stories. One theme: emotional strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build habit by habit, pause by pause, truth by truth. What can we learn from them? That the strongest people aren't the loudest, they're the most aligned. That resilience isn't about always having answers, it's about having the courage to ask better questions. That true peace isn't found in controlling everything, it's in knowing what to let go of and what to hold close. So how do you apply this to your life? Start small. Begin each morning with one line of purpose. When emotions rise, take a pause, just 5 seconds, and ask yourself what your calmest self would do. Write something honest to yourself this week. Let go of something that no longer serves you, even if it's just a belief. Prioritize not by urgency, but by meaning, and give yourself permission to live slower, more deliberately, more fully. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need to master all 10 habits by tomorrow, but choose one, practice it, let it shape you, and from there, let the transformation unfold. Because emotional strength isn't a destination, it's a practice. And the more you practice, the more your life begins to feel like yours again, not just something you're surviving, but something you're leading. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 stories resonated with you the most? Was it Olivia's unraveling, Marcus's pivot, Daniel's pause, Lisa's honesty, Noah's letting go, Ava's focus, or Jordan's quiet purpose? Comment the name of the person whose journey felt closest to yours and share why. Let's create a space here where others can read, relate, and realize they're not alone. Your insight might be the exact message someone else needs to hear today. And if this video sparked something inside you, if it made you think, feel, or pause, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. It's what keeps this work alive. Your support is the reason I can keep showing up with content that isn't just noise, but nourishment. Because the world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more truth, and more people like you, building the kind of strength that lasts.